They pulled a self-healing, UV-glowing space shuttle tile out of a cursed dirt mound in Utah, and instead of calling the military, they decided to set the sky on fire to see if the dirt would talk back. And honestly, at this point, the dirt is winning.
I mean, it's not just dirt, Malik. It's Skinwalker Ranch dirt. This is dirt that makes grown men with multiple PhDs forget how thermometers work. This is Season 7, Episode 1 of The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, all fired up, and I have never seen a group of scientists so determined to get themselves vaporized by an invisible alien thermostat.
We have to talk about the sheer audacity of this entire enterprise. For 6 seasons, Brandon Fugal, a man who conducts paranormal investigations while wearing immaculate, custom-tailored suits, has been politely observing the madness. They've been like birdwatchers. Oh, look, a UFO. Let's write that down. But Season 7, they woke up and chose violence.
They really did. The premise of this episode is literally, what if we stop taking notes and start throwing hands with the space-time continuum? And by throwing hands, I mean setting up a literal rocket thrust stand to blast extreme thermal energy directly into an invisible sky bubble. That is a real sentence that describes a real scientific methodology happening on the History Channel right now.
It's the evolution of science, Theodore. Phase 1, observe. Phase 2, hypothesize. Phase 3, shoot a massive pillar of fire into a haunted geographical triangle because a rock told you to. Sir Isaac Newton would be so proud. Or terrified. Probably terrified.
Newton would have quit. He would have seen Dragon, the chief of security, who carries a shotgun to protect them from literal radiation and invisible blobs, and Newton would have just gone back to apples. But let's set the stage here. The episode is called All Fired Up, and it's a double meaning. Literal fire, because they are blasting heat, and metaphorical fire, because the ranch actually responded. It responded. It didn't just ignore them. Like my cat when I buy it a new toy, the ranch is a reactive entity. This fundamentally changes the entire dynamic of the show and, honestly, of paranormal investigation. They applied a known variable, extreme heat, to an unknown system. And the system did a thing. A thing that we have to spend the next 20 minutes unpacking because my brain is still leaking out of my ears from the data they collected. The instruments behave differently here. The sky doesn't match the sky anywhere else. And yet, Travis Taylor, the resident astrophysicist, who has literally gotten radiation sickness from this property before, is like, let's poke it harder. He is the most bravely unhinged scientist on television.
Travis is operating on a level of intellectual spite that I deeply respect. The ranch gave him gamma radiation sickness, and instead of leaving, he came back with bigger lasers. It's a personal vendetta now. Oh, you're going to make my urine look like coffee? I'm going to light your invisible sky bubble on fire. It's incredible.
It is exactly that. It's an escalating neighbor dispute, but one neighbor is an astrophysicist and the other neighbor is a glowing orb of interdimensional energy that lives inside a Mesa.
Which brings us to the core shift in methodology. This episode is the line of demarcation. Passive investigation is dead. Active provocation is the new sheriff in town. For years, they just recorded what the instruments detected. Oh, the EMF meter is spiking. Oh, my phone battery died. Oh, a direwolf just walked through a portal. Cool. Put it in a spreadsheet.
The spreadsheets must be wild. Row 1, dead cow. Row 2, iPhone at 0%. Row 3, sky opened up and swallowed a drone. Row 4, dragon looked concerned.
Dragon always looks concerned. It's his resting state, but the shift from passive to active is crucial, because if you just watch a weird thing, it's a ghost story. If you hit the weird thing with a stick and record how angry it gets, that's data. And that is what this episode is all about. Poking the hornet's nest with a thermometer. But they didn't just poke it with a stick, they deliberately targeted the triangle. For anyone who hasn't memorized the topography of this cursed 512-acre Utah real estate flex, the triangle is the VIP lounge for Anomalies. It's an area where everything breaks, UAPs show up on demand, and there's allegedly a giant invisible force field bubble,
hovering 30 feet in the air.
Right, the bubble, the anomaly, the invisible 2,000-foot force field that intercepts our drones.
We should probably aim the rocket thruster directly at its underbelly. What could possibly go? The reasoning is so wonderfully absurd. They think, well, the ranch responds to human activity. When we dig, it gets mad. When we drill, things fly around. Let's see what happens if we simulate a rocket launch, but keep it strapped to the ground. It's an act of scientific escalation. They are knocking on the door.
But it's not a polite knock, it's a SWAT team breach. They establish baselines: ambient temperature, atmospheric pressure, radar, EMF. Every sensor on the property is active. The monitoring station is fully staffed. They have created a perfectly controlled environment to measure total absolute chaos.
I picture them setting up these environmental baselines like you'd prep for a nice, calm chemistry experiment, completely ignoring that they are standing on land where Native American legends literally say a trickster god with a lightning whip lives. Let's just check the barometric pressure before we summon the elder gods.
And the silence before they run the experiment. The episode highlights this perfectly. It's that heavy, pregnant silence where all the instruments are humming, the heat is building, and the environment hasn't responded yet. It's not the absence of data. It's the calm before the data punches you in the face.
It's the horror movie silence, but instead of a jump scare, it's an anomalous radar return that violates the laws of aerodynamics, which, to Travis Taylor, is way scarier than a ghost.
A ghost he can explain. A ghost is just localized swamp gas and quantum entanglement. But a radar return that lacks a consistent reflectivity profile moving against the wind? That keeps Travis up at night. That makes him pace around his house muttering about thermodynamics.
But wait, we have to back up, because they didn't just decide to fire heat into the sky for fun. They did it because of the Mesa, the geological elevated dirt mound of doom. Over the prior seasons, they've been trying to drill into this thing because ground-penetrating radar showed a massive 400-foot object buried inside it, looking like a crashed debris field. A 400-foot object deep inside solid sandstone. And when they finally managed to drill into it, breaking multiple drill bits, mind you, because the ranch hates power tools, they pulled out spoils, cuttings, and inside those cuttings, they found ceramic compounds. Ceramics. Now, ceramics sounds boring. It sounds like you found an old coffee mug from a 1970s pottery class. But in geology, finding ceramic deep inside a natural sandstone mesa is like cutting open a fish and finding a perfectly functioning Rolex. It shouldn't be there.
Exactly. Earth does not self-refine into ceramics. Dirt doesn't just sit around for a million years, get squeezed, and decide to become a high-temperature engineered compound. Ceramics require processing. They require extreme, intentional, sustained heat. They require a kiln or a hyper-advanced propulsion system, either or.
It's a manufactured object. They even had an archaeologist, Chris Roberts, look at it on the spoils table. It had a glazed surface on one side and a porous, cross-hatched geometric pattern on the other. It looked like it had been pressed into place and baked. 470 feet down inside a solid rock.
And the composition, the specific elemental breakdown, carbon, oxygen, silicon, magnesium, aluminum, it matched the properties of stealth technology, or more specifically, the thermal protection tiles used on the space shuttle. They found space shuttle tiles buried inside a prehistoric rock in Utah, which implies that whatever is in that mesa experienced extreme, localized heat during its formation or its crash landing. So the team's logic is actually somewhat sound in a completely insane way. Hey, we found a heat shield material buried in the rock. The rock clearly interacts with the sky bubble. Let's blast the sky bubble with extreme heat and see if the rock's Bluetooth connects. That is exactly the logic. They are treating the entire ranch like an escape room puzzle. We found the fire gem in the rock cave, so we have to use the fire spell in the sky zone to unlock the next clue. It's brilliant. and it implies intentional formation. Something processed this material. Something applied the conditions necessary to produce it.
Whether that something was human, ancient, technological, or alien, that remains the central unanswered question. But they aren't treating it as background noise. They are treating it as a signal that says, I like heat. So Brandon Fugal, in his three-piece suit, probably nods slowly, steeples his fingers, and says, bring me the largest fire machine you can find.
But before they built the fire machine, we have to talk about what happened in the lab with these ceramics. Because finding a space shuttle tile in a rock is weird, but what this tile did under a microscope is straight-up sci-fi body horror. They took it to a physicist, Dr. Brian Patchett, at Utah Valley University.
Right. They put the ceramic shard into a scanning electron microscope, an SEM. An SEM bombards the object with a beam of electrons to magnify it 1,000,000 times. Standard procedure. You look closely at the thing, you see the atoms, you go home.
Except this thing didn't want to be looked at. When the electron beam hit the ceramic, the surface of the material started to change. Pits and holes began to physically open up on the surface of the solid ceramic. It was morphing in real time.
And Dr. Patchett is sitting there sweating, thinking he's destroying this priceless anomalous artifact with his microscope. So they turn the electron beam off. And what happens, Malik? What does the magic space dirt do?
It heals itself. The holes close back up. The ceramic restructures itself back to its original state once the energy source is removed. The material is self-healing. It reacts to an energy input by changing shape. And when the energy is gone, it resets. That is an active, engineered, smart material.
Let me say this slowly. They found a smart material thermal heat shield that heals itself from electron beams, buried nearly 500 feet deep inside a natural geological formation in Utah. And people wonder why Travis Taylor looks so stressed out all the time.
If I found a self-healing rock in my backyard, I would move. I would sell the house to a paranormal enthusiast at a steep discount and leave the state. But these guys, they take it to a lab, shoot it with electrons, and then go, wow, it likes energy. Let's go build a massive rocket engine and shoot fire at the sky.
Don't forget the UV light. They also tested the ceramics under ultraviolet light. Normal ceramics absorb UV light. They just sit there being boring. But this ceramic, type A, fluoresced. It glowed. It reacted to different frequencies of light and energy.
So you have a material that requires extreme heat to create, that absorbs and transforms under energy, and that heals itself. The implication here is staggering. It means whatever is inside the Mesa isn't dead. It's dormant. Or it's operating on a time scale we don't understand.
It's a responsive architecture. The material itself is a machine, which perfectly sets up the hypothesis for the triangle experiment. If the buried material reacts to energy, and the triangle is the epicenter of the ranch's energy field, what happens when we feed the triangle a massive thermal input?
Enter the thrust stand. They brought in a company called Lock Precision to design a custom thrust stand to mount a rocket motor upside down. Not to shoot a rocket into the air, but to blast maximum heat, light, and smoke directly upward into a very specific 30-foot spot above the triangle.
This is so deeply unhinged. Let's strap a rocket engine to the dirt and fire it at God. It's like something Wile E. Coyote would design to catch the Roadrunner, but instead of the Roadrunner, it's a transdimensional UFO.
And they know exactly where to aim because in Season 6, they had an incident where a rocket they fired literally hit an invisible blob midair at 31 feet and got destroyed. So they are aiming the fire right at the blob. They are trying to smoke out the invisible force field.
I love that they call it the Blob. We have all these high-tech terms, electromagnetic anomalies, transient radar signatures, and then they're just like, aim the fire at the invisible blob. It's perfect. So they set up the rocket motor, the baseline is established, the instruments are running, the thermal output reaches its target range.
The heat column goes up. The sky above the triangle is getting absolutely blasted with thermal energy. And initially, nothing. It's just a column of heat, this silence we talked about. But then the baseline shifts, and it doesn't shift like a Hollywood explosion. It shifts like a real scientific anomaly, a gradient.
Right. It's not a sudden laser beam shooting from the sky. It's a slow departure from expected parameters. Sensors start registering fluctuations that weren't there 10 minutes ago. Small deviations become larger readings. The environmental inconsistency becomes mathematically undeniable.
The heat was the input. What came next was not part of the experimental design, because above the triangle, following the thermal deployment, phenomena appeared in the sky. UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena.
And this is where the multi-instrument monitoring is so crucial. If one guy sees a light in the sky, it's a drone. If a thermal camera sees a spot, it's a bird. But they had visual confirmation, thermal imaging, and radar returns all pinging simultaneously.
The radar registered returns that lack consistent reflectivity profiles for physical objects experiencing atmospheric drag, meaning the things on the radar were ignoring wind resistance. The thermal cameras detected heat signatures at altitude that didn't match any known aircraft, and visually, they moved in ways that wind-driven artifacts simply cannot.
It was a simultaneous cluster of readings across independent systems. You can't write that off as a lens flare. Lens flares don't show up on radar. Birds don't show up as extreme thermal anomalies moving against the wind. The baseline deviation was not random, it was responsive.
Okay, but we have to pause and talk about how this response curve perfectly mirrors the absolute chaos of just existing on this ranch. Because let's remember the human element here. We are talking about a location that has previously given Travis Taylor actual documented gamma radiation exposure.
Oh, we cannot gloss over the gamma radiation. A couple of seasons ago, Travis was investigating a cistern, opened something up, and took what his doctor described as a 2-year airport X-ray scanner dose of gamma radiation in 10 minutes. His urine turned the color of coffee.
And his response was not to go to a hospital in New York and never return. His response was to pack more shirts and go back to the ranch for 3 months. The man is built different, but it proves a point. The ranch reacts to human investigation with extreme, dangerous energy. And Dragon, let's talk about Dragon, Chief of Security. He started this whole series telling everyone not to dig. Don't dig. Brandon said no digging. Bad things happen when you dig. He was the voice of reason, disguised as a grumpy guy with a scowl. And now, Dragon is just standing there while they strap a rocket engine to the ground to shoot fire at the sky.
Dragon has given up. The psychological arc of Dragon is the real tragedy of Skinwalker Ranch. He went from strictly enforcing a no-dig policy to just handing out safety goggles while Travis tries to initiate a boss fight with a Mesa.
But it ties back to the central thesis. The ranch intensifies when the investigative pressure intensifies. When they just walk around, they get weird noises. When they dig a little, phones die. When they bring out a giant drill, they find space ceramics. And when they literally fire a rocket at the sky bubble summons a fleet of UAPs.
It's the correlation that demands investigation. Stimulus, then response. The sky didn't produce those readings before the heat was applied. It produced them after. That is the smoking gun of this entire episode. The ranch is on a feedback loop.
Which begs the terrifying question, are they just documenting the anomalies, or are they feeding them? Because if the ceramic material heals itself with energy, and the sky anomalies appear when you shoot energy at them, maybe the ranch is just hungry, Malik. Maybe Travis is just catering a cosmic buffet.
I mean, we know they tried to reach out to Elon Musk at one point, and he wasn't interested. Elon was probably like, look, I build rockets to go to Mars. I don't build rockets to feed a cursed dirt bubble in Utah. He drew a line.
Even the local Ute and Navajo tribes are like, yeah, we don't go there. There's a trickster god, keep driving. But this team, they bring out a thermal thrust stand. It's the ultimate hubris, but it's yielding the best data we've ever seen.
So let's look at that data again. The phenomena documented in this episode don't exist in isolation. They're part of the 6-season archive of weirdness. But this episode solidifies the pattern. Active provocation equals active manifestation. The temporal correlation is the key. They fired the heat, and directly, in temporal proximity to that thermal deployment, the instruments lit up. It's not a coincidence. After 6 seasons, the team is officially operating under the assumption that coincidence is mathematically impossible here.
Exactly. Is the ranch just a passive spooky zone where weird things occasionally drift through? No. It is a system that registers external stimulus and generates a corresponding response. The ranch is playing a game of Marco Polo, but when you yell Marco, it throws a UFO at your head.
And it explains so much of the past unresolved data. Why does the triangle produce disproportionate activity? Because it's the receiver. Why does the Mesa have heat-processed ceramics? Because it's the engine or the battery. They are connected. The ceramic materials buried in the Mesa and the aerial phenomena above the triangle are components of a single interconnected system. That is the hypothesis emerging from this episode, and it is methodologically serious. It is a responsive architecture embedded in the landscape. A responsive architecture. I love that phrasing. It makes it sound like a smart home designed by an insane, multi-dimensional architect. Alexa, turn on the UAPs. Alexa, irradiate the astrophysicist. Alexa, heal the magic dirt rock. But that's exactly what it is. If the materials were designed, engineered, and deliberately placed to interact with specific energy inputs, then the team at Skinwalker Ranch didn't just run an experiment. They accidentally pushed the power button on a machine we don't have the vocabulary to describe.
And this is where science reaches its boundary. The instruments recorded everything. The samples were analyzed. The data is real. It's documented. It's peer-reviewable. But there is no clean explanatory framework to contain it. The data sits on the table looking at them, and science just shrugs.
Every time they get close to a definitive answer, the data introduces a new complexity. They find a buried object, but it's covered in space shuttle tiles that heal themselves. They shoot fire at the sky, and the sky shoots radar anomalies back. The ranch actively resists final conclusions.
Which isn't evidence of incompetence by the team. It's evidence that the phenomenon is genuinely beyond the current boundary of human scientific understanding. We are trying to measure a quantum supercomputer with a yardstick and a thermometer.
But we have to push this further because the implications of this interconnected system are terrifying. If the Mesa is the hardware, and the triangle is the software, and the energy input is the power cord, who plugged it in? Who built the system?
Right. What created the ceramic materials and when? Are we talking ancient humans who somehow possessed stealth bomber manufacturing techniques? Are we talking a crashed extraterrestrial vessel that got buried in sandstone over millennia? Or is it interdimensional? Is it a permanent portal structure?
And what is the physical mechanism connecting the thermal input at ground level to the aerial phenomena above? Is the heat traveling through the ground into the mesa, activating the ceramics, which then beam a signal up to the invisible bubble, which then opens a door for the UAPs? It's like a Rube Goldberg machine of high strangeness.
And the scariest part is that the team knows this now. They aren't fumbling in the dark anymore. 6 seasons of data have given them a deep comparative understanding of how the ranch behaves. They know what it responds to. They know where its activity concentrates. That's why they built the thrust stand.
They have weaponized their own confusion. They know they don't understand it, but they know exactly which buttons make the machine go bing. Season 6 was the season of extraction, pulling the ceramics out. Season 7 is the season of activation. They are actively pushing variables into the unknown just to measure the splash.
But here is the escalating horror of that strategy. You know how when you turn on a really old, really massive industrial machine, it doesn't just immediately power down when you flip the switch off. It takes time to spin down. The momentum carries it forward.
Yes, the response curve of the ranch. The experiment ended. They powered down the thrust stand, they logged the instruments, the sky visually returned to normal, but Skinwalker Ranch has a documented history of events that do not respect human work schedules.
The anomalies persist. They appear in the hours and days following active operations. Whenever they woke up with that thermal burst, whatever system they activated, it didn't just go back to sleep because Travis Taylor went to the craft services table to get a sandwich.
The ceramics are still in the Mesa. The invisible bubble is still in the triangle. The UAPs didn't leave, they just stepped back into the shadows. The ranch is a participant in the experiment now, and it might be the one running the timeline.
They started a fire, Malik, and the fire is still burning. They knocked on a door that has been closed for thousands of years, and something answered. And now they have to live on the property with whatever they let out.
Okay, we have been yelling about space dirt and invisible sky bubbles for half an hour. Let's try to land this plane, or at least crash it safely into the Mesa. Did we even cover everything?
I mean, did we mention that the ceramics have different core and surface compositions? Like an M&M, but the chocolate is stealth technology and the candy shell heals itself from electron beams?
We touched on the self-healing, but it's worth reiterating because it breaks my brain. We covered the shift from passive to active methodology. We covered the thrust stand in the triangle. We covered the simultaneous radar, thermal, and visual UAP anomalies that only appeared after they applied the heat.
We covered the interconnected system hypothesis, the idea that the Mesa and the triangle are just two ends of the same haunted battery. We covered Travis's terrifying radiation history and Dragon's absolute capitulation to the madness.
I think we got the entire unhinged landscape of Season 7, Episode 1. They applied a known variable to an unknown system, the system reacted, and now they have data that proves the paranormal is responsive to thermal provocation. It is a genuine scientific escalation, even if it looks like a sci-fi B movie.
It's the most scientific work currently being conducted by guys in cowboy hats and three-piece suits. I am fully committed. I want them to bring a larger rocket next week. I want them to laser the dirt until it begs for mercy.
They're going to activate a dormant interdimensional Stargate by the finale. And it's going to be brought to us by the History Channel. Send this episode to someone who needs this level of chaotic scientific methodology in their life.